Have you found yourself making excuses and not taking massive action on the things that you know would take you closer to your goals? Today's episode is a little bit of a shift away from marketing, and it's looking a little bit more generally at the reasons why we make these excuses and hold ourselves back from taking action on the things that are most important to us. Today, I want to share the top 3 excuses I've experienced myself. And make sure you stick around to the end because as an added bonus, I want to share the root cause of these excuses and how you can become more aware of better ways and more empowering ways to manage the excuses you find yourself making. Hi there, my name's Paul Heron, and this is the From Zero to Marketing Hero podcast. This podcast is my year-long challenge to myself to record and upload a podcast every single day for the next 12 months. And I hope that documenting my journey and the highs and lows along the way can help you guys as listeners and subscribers in your own journeys. So let's get started. Let's start peeling back some of the layers on what these excuses really mean and what's really holding us back. The first excuse, and one that I've experienced many, many times, even as recently as yesterday when I was meant to do something around the house. But the excuse that came up was, I don't have enough time. And at some level, I understand where this comes from. There are an unlimited number of choices in terms of things that we could be doing to spend our time on. We have so many commitments, from our families to our work commitments to the things that we want to be looking after ourselves. And with all that choice, it can seem overwhelming in terms of how we allocate our time. But the thing is, if we have made a decision that something is truly so important to us that instead of thinking of it as a should, instead of thinking we should be doing these things, we should be taking these actions, if we truly have decided and made a decision that these are activities that we must be doing, then I genuinely believe we need to stop making excuses and find the time to be doing these things that we have decided are truly important to us. And I've been stuck here many, many times. And I think in hindsight, looking back, it is a combination of quite a few different things, possibly a combination of the following excuses that I'm going to mention in a moment. But I think the key thing to remember here is this distinction between things we should be doing and things we really must be doing. For far too long, I have personally made excuses that sound like I should be going to the gym, or I should be finally doing what's needed to get my head around this marketing stuff. But it wasn't until I finally made the decision and decided that this is something I must do. And that only came from building enough leverage, I guess. If I truly want this business to work and I want to be able to coach and do the thing that I love doing far into the future, then this is just something that is no longer a should. It's no longer I should work this out. This has become a must. For me to take the next steps in my career as a coach and in my business, to start doing group coaching, which is one thing that I am excited to hopefully start taking steps towards in the not too distant future, I need more and more people to become aware of who I am and what my message is. And I made the decision as recently as only a few weeks back that this is now no longer a should, it is a must. And over the next 12 months, if I'm serious about this, there are no more excuses. I do have the time. The second excuse that I have spent so much time pondering, and I've already spoken about this in a previous podcast episode, is the idea that I'm just not ready. I'm not ready yet. For me, this comes back to this perfectionism that I have been prone to all my life. But if I take that layer back, if I go a little bit deeper again, why do I want things to be perfect? And in the end, I think it comes back down to not wanting to look silly. And at some level, I think this excuse is trying to protect me in some way. But the thing is, it wasn't until I moved my thinking from something that I should be doing to something I must be doing. I need to be able to just jump in and let myself be the beginner. There was no way that I was ever probably going to be ready enough for my perfectionist mind to truly feel ready to tick that box and give the okay to jump in and start doing this. I had to stop making that excuse and start just taking massive action towards the thing that was most important to me. And the third excuse that I want to mention today, again, something that I have experienced so much of, and again, something that I experience popping up regularly in my coaching and something that I know a lot of us struggle with is the idea of not knowing where to start or not knowing what to take action on. It's one thing to decide and make a decisive decision that I'm not going to be settling for the status quo anymore. I have decided that this is the thing I'm going to do. This is my vision and this is what I'm going to work towards. But when it comes time to thinking about what that first step is going to look like, it can be overwhelming. There are so many moving parts and things that we could be thinking about. And this can lead to overwhelm, confusion, uncertainty, and can lead us to inaction and not moving the needle forward at all. But in the end, this is just another excuse that we tell ourselves or we make with ourselves to make us feel okay with not taking action. The thing is, if we're serious that this thing that we're wanting to move towards is no longer a should, this thing is a must, something that we must be doing, we need to be doing, we need to just get started and we need to identify what that first step is going to be. We can only take on one action at a time. If our goal is to create a successful business, for example, there are many, many actions that are going to have to fall into place, many steps that we're going to have to take before we can get to a point where we can reflect back and see some of the success and some of the progress that we've been able to make. But when we're first starting out, we want to identify a very first step. I would always recommend zooming out as far as we can and looking at both the vision and thinking about what an appropriate first step is going to be. If we're just starting out on trying to create a new business, diving into pricing and product ranges and all this type of stuff might feel very overwhelming. We want to find a first step that is challenging, that feels like there is a bit of a challenge here, but also doesn't feel completely overwhelming. And from this zoomed out perspective, sometimes it makes it easier to think through what that first step might be. Some examples might be if you're thinking about starting a business in a field that you have not operated in the past, book in some meetings and have conversations with people who have been able to find success in these domains. For me personally, when I was thinking about coaching and what that world might look like, one of the first steps for me was to hire my own coach and see what the experience was like from the other side as a client. And that was hugely valuable for me at the time in terms of making decisions and helping me sort of work through what my roadmap was going to look like. So if you're finding yourself making the excuse that you don't know where to start, move away from feeling stuck in the weeds, zoom out as much as you can, clarify the importance of these actions for you, identify whether this particular goal is a should or whether you have confirmed that this is a must for you to tackle, and just think through what that first step is going to look like for you and commit to taking bold, massive action as soon as you can. So there you have it. They're the top 3 excuses that I have experienced many, many times in the past, as well as hopefully a few takeaways that you can take towards identifying some of these patterns in your own progress towards your own goals. Now, I mentioned at the start of this video that I just wanted to share an added bonus behind what the root cause of a lot of these excuses actually is. If you have decided that something is no longer a should, it has moved from a should to a must, and you have started to create a bit of a vision of what success looks like and have made a commitment to yourself to start taking massive action, and you're finding these excuses getting in the way and holding you back, then the root cause for most of these excuses is going to be fear. And this isn't necessarily a bad thing. Very often we are on autopilot and these excuses just happen at the subconscious level. As I mentioned earlier, these excuses are disguised as benefits to us. My perfectionism, for example, makes me feel okay about putting things off because I just need to wait a little bit longer to be ready. And in the past, I have felt good. I've felt okay about succumbing to some of these excuses. But when we can start to take notice, if we start noticing these excuses popping up and understanding that most likely these excuses are popping up because of our fears about making progress and taking action, then we're able to start becoming consciously aware of what's going on. And that's fantastic because that enables us to at least have a little opportunity to be able to think through what our next course of action might be. Now, taking the time to understand our fears is something that is a worthwhile experience. But ultimately, we don't want this understanding of who we are to further get in the way of us taking action. So I think it's all about just bringing it to the surface, understanding a little bit more about what's going on, becoming really clear about how serious we are about making these changes and making progress in the directions we're wanting to go, committing ourselves to taking massive action, and finding a first step that feels just out of the comfort zone enough to allow us to be able to confront some of this fear head on and take bold, courageous action anyway. Because at least in my experience anyway, trying to eliminate our fears is really difficult. And one of the only ways I've found that I have been able to reduce or eliminate some of the fears that I've experienced in the past is to actually take regular, consistent action confronting these fears to the point where you become much more comfortable completing the tasks. For me, public speaking and talking and creating content like this and putting myself out to the world is something that I had enormous resistance to. A lot of these excuses would have been popping up, holding me back, making progress. But it's only been confronting some of this fear, putting a plan in place that allows me to take regular, consistent action outside of my comfort zone that has been tremendously valuable in me now feeling quite comfortable getting up, speaking, talking, and being able to see that progress has been hugely valuable for me. So that's it for today. Hopefully that has provided some insights on where our excuses potentially come from. I'd love to know if you resonate with the excuses that I mentioned today. Are there any others that I missed that you find that continuously pop up and get in the way? Let me know. I think this is a fascinating conversation. You can head over to the Facebook group, which is the perfect place to start conversations. You can find that through my website, paulheronlifecoaching.com. If you are getting value from these podcasts, please consider hitting the subscribe button. It really does help with getting this podcast out to the world and to a wider audience. And until tomorrow, bye for now.